my prenatal care is just like through the roof. I feel like that's the main focus of my life right now. Hey beautiful people, my name is Brittany and today I'm really excited to share with you a pregnancy update video. Before I jump into this video, I want to tell you about a few resources which I think you may find super interesting to look over if you are interested in this topic of my pregnancy update. The first one is my podcast. At this time I have, I think about like 10 or 11 episodes over there, and I really go in depth in each of these podcast episodes about my pregnancy journey. The second one is a page on my Connor and Brittany website, the website Connor and I have together, where we answer a ton of questions that we have gotten in written format about pregnancy, birth, childcare. Also on that page is a link to our lifestyle and family channel. I'll link that down below too. And our relationship and sex positivity channel. So on both of those channels, especially on our lifestyle and family channel, we're answering lots of questions about pregnancy, etc. On my Instagram, I'm sharing daily updates. I love to do stories so you can see what I'm doing with my day, how I'm feeling. I specifically share a lot of the movement practices I'm doing and what I'm eating, etc. So if you're not already following me on Instagram, I really recommend it. And I recommend checking out my stories because that's what I put my time and energy into mostly, as opposed to just the pictures, you know, that you see on somebody's like main Instagram wall page. The final thing I want to share about is actually something new, and it's a pregnancy photo gallery. I just released it this past week, and I have pictures from throughout my pregnancy. I have nude pictures and clothed pictures where I'm just like sharing my pregnancy journey through these visual representation of my unique journey with how my body is changing and how it's captured on film. I have also like reflections about each time period that I've posted. So I think so far I have 5 weeks, 12 weeks, 16 weeks, and 21 weeks. And I'm gonna keep posting throughout pregnancy. So along with the pictures, there's also a little reflection about how I was feeling during that time, and then other resources if you wanna dive more into depth, like in a podcast, for example, about how I was feeling at that time. So please feel free to check out any of these resources I mentioned. I'll link them all in the description box below the video. I've been getting so many questions from all of you. Thank you, by the way. I love receiving your curiosities around, man, so many things. And I think the biggest way to phrase it all is kind of how has my life and my lifestyle changed since becoming pregnant? So I'm gonna talk about that. I'm gonna sort of split it up into different categories. And maybe I can start by sharing that as of today, I am 22 weeks pregnant, which is super exciting. I'm like somewhere in the middle of my second trimester, as they're often thought of. And I just passed the halfway mark at 20 weeks of like a standard length 40-week pregnancy. So I have some notes on my phone, basically the categories I'm gonna go over, and I'll just mark them off. I get a lot of questions about diet and fitness on this channel, relationships, self-care, business, and just like other lifestyle things. So I'm gonna sort of go in that order, more or less. I think that what people often like to see first are physical changes. So I'll talk about those and I'll show you. So maybe I can start by showing you the most notable physical change. Actually, honestly, the most notable physical change are probably my breasts, you know, which I can't fully show you here. But let me tell you, they have grown significantly. They've more than doubled at this point. They feel like they've tripled, and I just find them to be incredible overachievers. They're already producing colostrum, and you know, they're ready to go. Great job, great job. So that's a big physical change. And the other big one is that my womb is growing and my baby is growing. So I'll show you that. And one interesting thing about physical changes I've noticed in pregnancy, especially around the size of my midsection, is that it seems to change quite a bit throughout the day. So I just woke up a couple hours ago. I did some yoga. I had a smoothie. Like, my belly when I first wake up is usually feels more expanded. I empty my bladder, it changes. I have something to eat, it changes. When I do exercise, it changes. And then for other reasons that I'm not quite sure of, it just sort of changes. So some days I feel like I look and feel really full, and then some days not as much. So that's super interesting. I'll start with diet. One of the main questions I get is, has my diet changed at all since becoming pregnant? And I think in a big way, no, and in some ways, yes. I think less than the foods that I'm eating and the things I'm putting into my body, that hasn't changed so much. What has changed more is how I'm eating. So before this, I was from starting in April, I would say up through maybe October of this year, or last year now, 2018, I was really enjoying playing around with intermittent fasting, and I was eating in about a 3 to 4 hour window during the day, and that was feeling amazing for me. Once I got pregnant, in probably around 5 weeks of pregnancy, which I think is about when I made my last video, I made it in 8 weeks. Anyway, the point is, I was experiencing so much nausea and just exhaustion and really, really common things during early pregnancy, and just not feeling well. And I found that I just couldn't eat much at once. And yeah, it felt better to try and eat little things at different parts of the day. And most foods repelled me. And to be honest with you, I think something that's changed quite a bit about food and diet for me in pregnancy is that I feel like I'm not enjoying food quite as much as I did. Oftentimes I feel like not really that hungry, but kind of nauseous. So it feels better to eat something. That was really pronounced during my first trimester, and now it doesn't come up as often, but it does come up occasionally. I notice, especially if I'm exhausted, I can feel that way. Exhaustion and this nauseous feeling seem to be linked. And also when I do eat, it's I haven't had a ton of occasions where it feels that was the thing I wanted, that's so good. It's more so yeah, that's okay. And sometimes it'll feel like something that's okay right now, not okay in 5 minutes. So really, really interesting. I'm still eating a plant-based diet. I still eat a lot of fruits, leafy greens, vegetables. People have asked if I was gonna stay raw, raw fruitarian or any of those things during my pregnancy. And I would say I haven't been eating just raw food or just a purely fruit-based diet for some time now. I definitely still have a lot of that in my diet, and also I enjoy some cooked veggies, and now I've been playing around more with other cooked foods that are denser, that feel easier for me to eat in small quantities. Pumpkin or something like that, because it just isn't I'm having trouble eating a large volume of food, and eating a fruit-based diet requires a lot more volume and bulk because the calories are less dense. So that's been interesting in general. The other area I tend to get the most amount of questions around is my fitness practice or my movement practices. Has my acrobatics practice changed? Has my handstand practice changed? Calisthenics, dancing, yoga, whatever type of movement I was doing before, does it look different now, and how does it look different? So as I mentioned before, if you want more in-depth detail on basically any of these topics, I think the best place to check out is my podcast. I really go into detail there, and I have an episode where I go into great detail about this specifically. I also share a lot about this on my Instagram and through some other videos on my channel with Connor, and I have specific questions answered on the Q&A. I know I mentioned all this before, but just if you're yeah, Brittany, that's great, but I want more, I have more for you on those platforms. So the short answer to this question is yes, all of these practices have changed, maybe in different ways than one would expect. I didn't have any specific expectations for how these things would go. I just wanted to tap into how they felt for me and let my body and my connection with myself and this being inside of me sort of guide our way. And that's been feeling so good. There were definitely times when I was feeling more nauseous that I wasn't doing as much movement. And in general, I would say I'm doing less movement overall, which, yeah, it feels right in the sense that I'm really following. If I feel tired, for example, I'm not pushing myself to do movement. So I'm really just doing movement when not only does it excite me, which is most of the time, but also it feels like my body has the energy for it and it would be a benefit to my entire system instead of like, which I think is always a good thing to follow. And also there have been times in my life where I felt like I'm more like sticking to a regimen because it feels important and not always first, so tapping into if it's my highest delay at that time. So I'm really honing that skill with partner acrobatics. And yeah, that's a practice you may have seen of mine. I'll link a really cool video in the description below if you want to see me practicing it with Connor, who is baby daddy and also my primary acrobatics partner. We're still really loving acro, and we're definitely doing less, and also we're definitely making modifications that feel really important. I guess the biggest modifications are not doing any sort of movements that impact my womb area. So we've cut out certain moves. We're also modifying a lot of moves so that way, like the position of his feet. So a lot of what we do is L-basing acrobatics. So Connor's lying on his back with his feet in the air and I'm flying on his feet and his hands. And a lot of the moves, most of them concentrate on like the upper thigh area. That's where his feet are. And any of the ones that were more hitting on like my lower abdomen that we can still do by modifying, we're doing by changing the foot position. So now it's below like my hips, which is really cool and been fun to sort of play around with. We're also not doing any moves that aren't like 100% tried and true for us. So we're not training new moves. We're mostly focusing on, yeah, just things that are more chill moves for us that feel really safe and that we know how to fly together, how to come out of if it's not feeling quite right, etc. I'm not really practicing with anybody else at this time. I feel like Connor really knows my body. We've done so much around making these adaptations together, and in general, we're just really synced up in our acro practice. Handstands. I haven't been training as many handstands, which I miss, and I think it's mostly because of energy, just like time and energy, and also like training with Connor is really fun for me, and his back was hurting for a while, and so we haven't been doing as much together in the realm of handstands and calisthenics, which we often did together at the house, and I'm sort of doing those more on my own. It's also just more fun for me to train them with somebody else, to train them with him specifically, so I noticed feeling a little less motivated to do it on my own. I am still really enjoying them. Flexibility, yeah, I'm not doing as much flexibility training, especially with back bends. I'm really mindful of what feels good and what doesn't, and I've been noticing that like I can probably stretch to about like 60%, maybe 70% of my normal range of flexibility there, and then I get the sense like, yeah, that feels really good. That just feels like a nice, comfortable stretch, and then if I did more, it would be pushing into this realm that doesn't feel good for my body as my body's changing. I want to make a note here that I know a lot of these things are, I don't even know, like taboo topics or things that maybe society has told us to do in a certain way during this time in our lives, and I really always invite people to tap into what feels right for them. And I think that it's just so important to go with what feels right for you. So if you have your own feelings on like if it has felt good for you to do back bends or inversions during pregnancy, I so honor that, and I feel like keep rocking that. I know so many really amazing athletes who have found that during pregnancy, and this seems to be a typical thing too, just like during pregnancy, if there's something that you've already been doing before your pregnancy started, it's really good to keep maintaining that up to a point that feels good. So, you know, maybe not your 100%, maybe you're 60 or 70%. But like, if you haven't done something like powerlifting, maybe not the best time to start that practice when you get pregnant. Yeah, dancing, I'm really still loving dancing. Haven't been dancing as much, mostly because I'm traveling. I'm in Chiang Mai, Thailand right now, and I guess I'm not traveling, I'm living here. But my main dance practice was like a weekly dance I go to in Austin, Texas, which I'm really excited to get back to in a few weeks. I have been to a few ecstatic dances here and loved it, and just danced on my own. So I'm definitely still doing that, it's just not quite as regular. A huge thing that I've been doing more of is yoga. I used to have a yoga practice, like a regular daily yoga practice. Started from when I was like 18, and then I would say up until I really got into acrobatics, and then I wanted acrobatics to be what I was putting most of my time and energy into. So that was when I was like 26, 27, I don't know. So I did have a yoga practice for, in there, I'd say like a solid 6 to 8 to 10 years. I know these are really rough numbers, where I was developing that and enjoying that, maybe more like 6 years realistically. And I just love yoga, and I love stretching, and it's been feeling so good to start my day out with yoga, stretching, movement, sort of like fluid, no real plan, and then meditation. I could talk about those areas for a long time, but I feel like I'm ready to move on. Relationships, yes, this is another area I get a lot of questions. People have specifically asked me or Connor, are we still sharing in like open style, undefined, polyamorous relationships now that we're pregnant, and are we planning to as we have this child and have a family? And the answer is yes. Like, this is what feels really aligned for us. Similar to eating a plant-based diet, I don't feel like it's hard or weird now that I'm pregnant. It just is something that I've been doing that feels really right for me. And to continue having these sort of really natural, organic, loving, open, changing relationships in my life is what feels right for me. And it's been really fun fielding questions around that, I think, because maybe it's not the norm, which, I don't know, I guess I like receiving people's curiosities around things that might be different in other people's lives. I actually just recorded a podcast on polyamory and pregnancy, which I will put out before I put out this video or right around the same time, so that you can check it out if you want to hear the in-depth details, the juicy details on what that has looked like for me. Connor and I also did a specific video on this topic on our other channel that I'll link below. Self-care. Wow, how has my self-care changed since being pregnant? I would say what I would consider already really solid self-care practices have just skyrocketed. I feel like that is my main area of focus right now, because I think caring for ourselves is, really the best way that we can have a positive impact on the world, to start from within and then shine that outside of us. Yeah, I emphasize self-care a lot. I imagine that you've gotten that sense. And now it's me and this amazing being, and I feel even more excited about nurturing both of us in so many ways. So I guess the biggest thing I could say in this area is that being really attuned, having more space to listen and feel out what's right in this area has been a big part of the basis of my self-care. And from there, all these other things have flourished. So, like this daily yoga practice and meditation, and really focusing on rest and tuning in and self-education around pregnancy and birth and postpartum, and connecting with this being. I spend a lot of time doing belly massage and self-massage, and man, there are just a million different ways I'm really focused on self-care. I have a specific podcast on that as well. People often ask me, like, are you doing any prenatal care? And sometimes I notice other people will answer in the comments of a YouTube video or an Instagram, and they'll say no, like she's not doing any prenatal care. And I notice feeling like, wow, that really doesn't feel true for me. I feel like my prenatal care is just like through the roof. I feel like that's the main focus of my life right now. Business, what has changed there? Well, one of the big reasons that Connor and I are in Chiang Mai, Thailand right now, we come here about 2 months every year, and during the month of January, we run a retreat and then a public festival. And we just finished those about 2 days ago. So that's been a big part of my business life. And now that that's done, oh, the other big thing that I've been working on and now going to finish up now that that's done is my Healing Jealousy program. I've been so excited about this program and working on it for like a year and a half, I think. And it feels like a project I'm eager to finish probably in the next month, and definitely before the start of my 3rd trimester. There's other little odds and ends I want to finish up, like things I want to revamp on my website and the joint website, and just kind of like tying up business things that kind of feel like they're still out there. And you know, like taxes and closing out the year and all that stuff. It's very much on my mind to finish all these things up, and then to have a solid 3 months, my last trimester of pregnancy, where business for me is more like the day-to-day. So I'm just checking in, answering emails. What's the other thing I was gonna say? Recording videos, recording podcasts, doing some editing around that, doing posts on Instagram, things that are like the upkeep that I kind of have a natural rhythm with, but then not also having other big projects on top of it, which is hard for me because I love having some bigger thing I'm pursuing. And also I've been so immersed in pregnancy and, like I said, self-education around pregnancy and birth and postpartum. So it does feel like I have a bigger thing I'm putting my time and energy into. And I really want to be creating a lot of spaciousness to welcome this being into our lives. Other lifestyle things, does anything come to mind, Brittany, that has changed? I feel like I'm always changing, to be honest. So it does feel like things are changing, and a part of me wants to say, yeah, like everything has changed so much. And also, if I reflect on my life over the last 7, 8, even 10 years, I would probably have said that all the time. So life is still changing, and in ways sometimes it feels like intensely changing. Just the shifts in my body alone, my digestion, because my organs are all moving in my body, and my, sensitivity is a huge one. I feel like I've always been highly sensitive, and also even more so now, and more in tune. I feel like I know things. I can sense things with much more perceptivity. Yeah. My relationship with Connor has been really amazing. That's been something that's just continues to flourish, and the ways in which it is feel incredible. I've never felt so in love and so turned on, and so, that's a whole other video. Actually, I did a podcast on that. I talked a lot about turn on in my last podcast because I've been feeling really like sexually aroused, which is very different from my first trimester. I know I'm kind of all over the place. This is because I put other lifestyle things, and my mind feels like it has the freedom to just run haywire. So yeah, I know that kind of did a couple tangents there. Relationship with Connor feels amazing, flourishing more and more. I feel like my life is flourishing and feeling amazing, and also really intense sometimes, and overwhelming. And I'm like also so grateful. There's nowhere else that I'd rather be. I I'm so grateful for all of you being here, being curious about my journey, being open to hearing about it and feeling different things that hearing about it may bring up for you. I think that's a really big deal, and I really care about how you could be feeling about receiving this or just in your life in general. If you have any questions for me that I didn't answer in this video, feel free to post them down below. I likely have them somewhere else, so I also recommend checking out those resources I referenced. Yeah, and also I look forward to making another video soon. Sending you all tons of love. Mwah!